Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. It is another fine, lovely Wednesday morning here in Philadelphia. Welcome to the Coffee Break Chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, executive producer, Light Thief Productions, he, they pronouns, and we've got a good show for you today. We will be talking about the economy and the apparently failing economy if you believe everything that you read. And uh, we'll be talking about nobody wanting to work, the container crisis, and inflation. And we'll also be talking to our good friends at Spiral Q, Jennifer Turnbull and Liza Goodell, about Peoplehood. So, what's going on in today's world? Well, it's going to be quite sunny, according to the weather report. They've said abundant sunshine, which is something I've never seen before in a weather prediction. But apparently today is going to be abundant sunshine and a high of 76 here in Philadelphia. Um, it's a good day to be out and about, I suppose. And then we, have lots of good stuff going on too. We've got Dr. Rachel Levine being sworn in as the nation's first openly transgender four-star admiral. Dr. Rachel Levine was the head of health here in Pennsylvania before being tapped by the Biden administration. Um, and is now the head of health for the nation. And good for her. And I'm glad she's getting the recognition and accolades she deserves. We have a little bit of other local news. Interestingly, Councilmember Mark Squilla's staff member has been charged with voter fraud, participating in a voter fraud conspiracy. Apparently, this staff member has been in government for a long, long time. And this is what they actually mean, like where the whole deep state thing actually came from. When now people talk about deep state, they're just being idiots. But there are a large number of people who have been part of government literally forever, for most of their adult lives. They start being staffers in their teens or 20s, and they continue being staffers, administration after administration, no matter who's in office. And basically, what you get is having people in office that have official positions that can do things like this, like participate in a voter fraud scheme, um, casting false ballots, pushing people to vote for certain candidates that certain other people support, and then they're never elected. They're just government workers, so they can't get fired. That is the true essence of the deep state, and if you want to rail against that, I suppose I can't fault you for it, but don't come at me with a bunch of deep state nonsense about people who are elected into power. That's just not what the deep state is. Um, we want to talk a little bit about Walnut Street Theater too, is a local theater here in Philadelphia. They've had a lot of protesting, folks protesting working conditions and um, the social conditions at the Walnut Street Theater. The uh, head of the Walnut Street Theater, Bernard Harvard, is purportedly, according to multiple accounts, relatively misogynistic and racist in his outlook on things, in his casting, in his way of hiring people. And so, in response to this, recently Walnut Street closed the theater for several hours for a company-wide event that included employees, board members, and artists to learn about, discuss, and celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion with our guest speaker, Dr. Brandy Baldwin. um, if you don't know, Dr. Brandy is a shall we say, infamous DEI speaker. And she's infamous because she was hired by the similarly in trouble city of Philadelphia's public library system to give a DEI speech to the folks at the public library and talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion with all of them. During that speech, since they're librarians and not mute idiots, they came out of that session and spoke about what Dr. Brandy talked about, which included things like white supremacy not being real and should be avoided as a topic, and how there is no white privilege. So yeah, I think perhaps maybe y'all should have gone with a different DEI expert. We had one on our show last week. You could talk to her, um, or any number of other people of color in the theater industry that have this experience. And on that note, I'm going to bring on my guests, Jennifer, Liza. Welcome to the show, and please introduce yourselves, your pronouns, and what it is you do. We'll start with Jennifer since you're in the middle.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Turnbull. I am a co-director of Spiral Q, and please mix up my pronouns. I'm including the public in my gender exploration, so please reflect back what you experience.
Awesome. And Liza?
Hi, I'm Liza Goodell, and my pronouns are she, her.
Welcome to the show. So you guys are co-directors of Spiral Q. Spiral Q is relatively famous for having been established. I'm sorry, I forget what was the year? Uh,
1996.
1996, and doing public art projects or art projects with the participation of the public for the last, what does that make, 25 years?
25
25
years.
years.
We would be, celebrating around 25, but we got thrown off a little bit.
Yeah. So what threw you off?
Well, Ida came through September 1st, and her floods, her like tailwind floods that came up into the north, flooded our storage units in Montclair near Phoenixville, and we lost probably about 80% of everything that was up there. 7 feet of water touched up to 7 feet of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that will happen. And I've talked a little bit about you guys on the show in the past couple of weeks. Um, just because I find this, I mean, personally, I think of this as an example of how gentrification impacts the culture of a place. You guys are a cultural institution, and you know, I don't know if I'm talking out of turn, but like basically, you had a space in West Philly in Powelton Village, right?
Well, first in Powelton and then in what is that?
I
West
think we're in
Powelton?
West Politan now. Technically.
I
Sorry,
mean, I
that
was,
sounds like really that's super specific, but Philly.
yeah, like I don't know that most people are gonna know the difference between Powelton and West Powelton, but
Well, we moved twice, I guess. We moved twice. That's why.
but you had a spot in Paulton, and I'm just I have no inside information here, but I'm guessing the story went something like you're leasing a space, and your landlords came to you and said, "Hey, we're probably selling this space. You got to move."
Yeah.
Pretty much. Pretty much. It was definitely a lot more loving than that because our landlord was the person who gave us shelter from the last time we got displaced because of development. But people invest in places and things, and then they want to move on with their lives and make some money. So if that was all that it was, then we would have been able to find another place when we first started looking, probably about 3 years ago. Um, we have been on the search for a place to be, but we had this huge collection that we always had to consider, and not necessarily the capacity to be able to really sift through and honor all of the stories and all the people that made all the work, and so here we are, affected by and very squarely in the vesica Pisces between development, displacement, gentrification, and climate change.
Yeah, yeah. And this is one of the ways in which climate change will affect people of color and people of less means greater than those with more means and of the class of folks that are in power, is that your property that you moved to, I that you moved to out of after moving out of West Palton, is in an area that is a floodplain. And I would guess that, and again, no inside information or research here, I'm just guessing, it was affordable because nobody wants to be there.
Well, it wasn't that nobody wanted to be there. It was that nobody was there yet, and we were following our relationships because we know that social capital is the original capital and the most powerful capital. And when you don't have financial means, you really, really, really depend on your social wealth. And so that's what we did. We followed our relationship with our landlord out to Phoenixville. He bought a place so that he could have a lot of space and have renters for lots of different makers and things like that. And he offered
Hmm.
a super affordable place with him. And so uh, we said, can't beat that. We know who it is. They live there. They're taking care of our stuff. They've known us for a long time. They're an art person themselves, and they care about the work. So of course we're gonna go and take advantage of a nearly what seemed like a nearly perfect situation, considering all of our means and our circumstances.
Yeah, unfortunately, that means that when hurricane rains or remnants of a hurricane flow through the Delmarva area, you got flooded out, and a lot of history got flooded out with it. Um, yeah, we've been talking about that. I find this fascinating, from an outside perspective, and I hate to get all like sciencey about it, but just find it fascinating from a political science perspective. Just as a very concrete example of what can happen and what does happen in the real world economy, because of local decisions, like things that city council people decide, and that people, like everyday people making little decisions. These little decisions all add up to the same thing, and I find that fascinating. Um, so speaking about everyday people, why don't you guys introduce Peoplehood and tell me what it is, tell our viewers what it is, and talk a little bit about that.
I think, okay.
Yeah,
Jennifer's creating space for me to speak because
yeah.
um less apt to speak here. Yeah, so Peoplehood is our longest running event and really program. This is the 21st year we're doing it. We didn't get to do it last year. So it's really brings together all of Spiral Q's like various partners to walk together in the streets of West Philadelphia. So that's our founding work is in working with activists and making giant artwork and giant puppets to amplify their campaigns in the streets. I have an angry cat in the background. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I've got
Yeah,
an
and
angry
so
baby in the background.
our activist partners, our youth and school partners, neighborhood groups, all to walk together in solidarity. Typically, so it goes from the Paul Robeson House, which is kind of a natural partnership. Or you're pointing to something. It's kind of a natural partnership because Paul Robeson was an artist and an activist, and his home is a museum in West Philadelphia. If people haven't been, I believe he lived there for the last 10 years of his life. Is that true, Jennifer? We were just there yesterday. So actually a new thing this year for Peoplehood is that, so we started the Paul Robeson House. We line up on 50th Street. And they're going to be offering tours in the morning. So if you're coming to watch the parade or join the parade, you can get a short tour of the museum too, which is right at the corner of 50th and Walnut. So then the parade is all handmade art. And then we go through West Philadelphia and end at Clark Park. And this year we usually have a giant puppet pageant, which is sort of it's like a story told through, it's participatory. So if you don't know it, you can join in that day, which makes it a little chaotic, but also it tells the stories of the people who are in the parade to a certain extent. But we're not doing that this year because of capacity, because of the flooding and everything. But we are going to end with some performances in the park as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and like I've definitely seen some of your performances in parks. I filmed one with you guys. That was kind of fun. Um, and so yeah, can people still join up with your parade? Are you still looking for people to participate? Or are you just like should people just come and be ready to watch or anything that folks at home should know?
Yeah, so for mostly all of Sparky's programs, we design them so people could join at any moment. It's really meant for the process and for people to join in. So we just started last night doing community art builds at our temporary studio space at it's basically right near Girard and Belmont at 4247 Styles. And if anyone's interested in joining those, I can send them the schedule and the address and all the info. And so basically we make a parade together in this studio space, mainly using cardboard, paper mache. And then we're also focusing on this year specifically doing art making with kind of a lot of people have signed up for it, a lot of organizers, so that artwork can be used in the parade, but then also their campaigns in the streets. So people could come to like 1 hour and then they don't even come to the parade. They could help out by flyering, and letting people know about it. They could come the day of to watch. They could watch in the middle of the route and join in the parade and just walk as themselves. Like you don't need to be wearing a costume or, it's kind of very fluid, the participation, and it's intended to be that way. So Jennifer, I was going to have Jennifer talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the park. Is that cool?
Yes. So in the park, when we get to the park, it's a wonderful, we've made it. We're so excited because it is everyday people, walking and marching. And it's not like, professional puppeteers and, paraders, although we do a lot of that. And if you have the stamina, you're like, yes. And if you're like, oh, I haven't, walked in a little while because COVID, maybe you'll be a little tired at the end. But it's like, yeah. So we arrived and we walked down into the dog bowl and across the field, and then on the other side of the dog bowl, everyone will sit, kind of on the hill. So it's a really beautifully natural stage like that. And then right in the middle of the dog bowl, we'll address everyone. And since 2015, when actually the year that Fran Alston, who was the original founder and director of the West Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, and Paul Robeson House and Museum, uh, since that year, we have been doing a flash mob style dance that I choreographed called the Healing and Reconciliation Dance, and it embodies, symbols of violence that have been done to Black and Brown bodies throughout United States history. And it's meant, also like many of our works is participatory. So usually I'll plant a few people and then invite everyone, as they're willing and able, to come and join in the movement. And so, it's just a short phrase that keeps getting done over and over and over again. So like kind of like a double dutch jump rope. You're like, okay, let me just wait to get in, and then you're bam, I'm here. And it's really beautiful. The first time that it happened, I was like, oh, it's working. I just like whole field in my brain, like I saw the whole field just like filled up with people doing this healing and reconciliation dance. And the idea is that when you do it, you embody and acknowledge what has been happening. And you can't deny it, because that kind of communication, it kind of skips over your high thought consciousness brain. It kind of goes down to this like more basic part of your body. So the idea is that it is a tool for expression, for acknowledgement, for change and transformation. And so we do that every year, and we're really excited. We also have one of our incubate projects, which is a pilot project that we did, coming up, called The Live-In, and it's a kind of storia, which is like a huge kind of like flip picture book, but like really, really, really big. And Rakia Lindsay was part of our process earlier this year, and so she's going to be performing that for us. And we always have our famous West Powelton drum line. They've been with us since the very beginning of Peoplehood. They were there at the first one with their steppers, and we're really excited to have the return of the steppers to the Peoplehood Parade this year, because they have been working really, really, really hard to get their steppers back. That part of the tradition, fell away a little bit in the middle years, but they are 30 years old now. And so I'm like super excited to see these girls dance in the field. Cause Antoine and everybody, and Johnny and everybody, they usually get, go in there. Everybody's like, oh my gosh. But when the girls come through, people are gonna fall out. So I'm excited.
Awesome. And I'm excited too. I wanted to talk so Spiral Q, um, I don't know if you guys would describe your mission like this, but just from an outside perspective, you guys kind of enable the public to speak and like build a platform that people can speak on. And I kind of love that. That's why I started my production company. That's why, like, I do what I do. And one of the things that was luckily missed getting flooded, although part of it did, but part of it didn't, is the dancing mailboxes that y'all made. And you made those a number of years ago, right? But they were used in the Count Every Vote protest this summer.
Well, I'll let Liza tell the full story of the making of the mailboxes, but I will say, as a framework for the answer to that question, is that some of those works, right, not the mailboxes, some of those works were made, a decade ago, um,
Mm.
Mm.
and 4 years ago. And so, just to make sure that we're pulling out the importance of storage and the importance of affordable storage, dry storage, because the the active decision and maybe sometimes also the passive decision to keep and hold these, ephemeral stories in this not concrete but also sort of ephemeral version, but it's like I can touch you, feels like, oh, this is what, diversity, equity, and inclusion in action actually is. It's not just a bunch of hot air and philosophy. This is what it is when it is done. You're holding and centering the stories and the lives of the most marginalized, the folks on the outside, to come in. So, yeah. And Liza, you can tell us about the mailboxes.
Oh yeah, so the mailboxes were made last September. We had been approached by Vote That John. They were a new organization. I think they kind of formed around the election last year to get first time voters and specifically youth voters to register and to educate them on all the new ways to vote, because last year there was a lot of new ways because of the pandemic, or ways that people hadn't been familiar with. And so they were going out into like shopping centers and they were just like hitting the streets doing it. And so they came to us to like kind of ask about how they could get attention basically. And so we know how to make a spectacle. And so we created these kits. And so it was the mailbox, and it was kind of like a wearable voting booth, and some signs and props. And so they would use those to go out into the streets. And then people would go to them and be like, we want your puppets. And so then we ended up making 2 more because other community groups were interested in using them. So yeah, we had them already when all that was happening, and we were called to action.
And then, so they were used at the Count Every Vote. I guess I don't know whether to call it a protest, counter protest, whatever. It was a party, really.
Yeah,
it was a good party.
Block party.
At the end of the day, yeah, it was a party with a bunch of, not even a bunch, a few Trump supporters standing in a little cage, kind of playing ironic songs.
Oh man, those folks, they were so sad.
Listen, Rage Against the Machine. If you're playing Rage Against the Machine, you want every vote counted, and you want somebody that's fascist out of office. Like,
but
Rage Against the Machine.
Like you're playing all this music, but you don't even remember where and why it was created in the first place. Like, you need to find some other stuff. Like,
listen, Tom Morello did not write those lyrics to support your fascist ideas, okay?
that was not cool too. I mean, hey, it's okay. I won't go there.
I mean, it's good music at the end of the day, I guess. But
that's the thing about art and music, is that it's very inclusionary, because anybody can take it and just be like, yeah. Like, okay, I just have to tell this one side story. So my late my late mother-in-law was so like very about this one song, and she would like play it and sing it, and was like, when my kid was young, she's like, I need to make sure that you know this song. And I'm asking my partner, I'm like, Jared, what is this song? Like, she's like the most like pious Catholic Irish, person. Like, she got the Irish Lifetime Award, right? And she sings this song, and I'm like, what? What is this song? And Jared's like, it's the like militant underground, like Irish. I think it's the IRA. Is it what? I'm not too familiar with it, but I was just like, oh, okay. So this song is really a protest, like militia,
it's a
like
protest anthem. Yeah,
like, this is a protest anthem. Do you know what you're actually like? Are you connecting the dots? Because I think, I don't know. Anyway, it's like, all right. So that's what I mean. It's just like, music and art is so prolific. People can't even. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it is, like, it's amazing that art, even good art, and I don't, I'm an artist that I don't subscribe to the art is a subjective mentality. I know a lot of people hate me for that, but I think art is very objective and very universal, and that good art can speak to anyone, whether they agree with it or not. So yeah, we were talking a little bit about that last week with the Dave Chappelle stuff, and I'm still seeing all this going around on my timeline about oh if you're supporting the Dave Chappelle comedy show, then unfriend me and whatever. And I'm like, look, it didn't speak to you, and that's a shame. And yeah, there's probably a better way to do that in the modern era. There's probably a better way than, like I wouldn't go back to uh George Carlin or you know who was the guy that literally set himself on fire?
Oh,
uh
Richard Pryor.
yeah, Richard Pryor, thank you.
I didn't know
Like,
they did that. I gotta look that up.
yeah, like Richard Pryor said some shit like I wouldn't you but it was all in the service of this same type of delivery where that Dave Chappelle does all the time, where you start with like this kind of narrow view that you don't actually agree with, but you deliver it that like as if you're serious, and then you like slap the audience in the face by saying now you're all stupid for agreeing with what I just said. Anyway, we'll get off that topic for now, but what I wanted to bring up about the mailboxes and tie it back into the fact that you guys got one of the mailboxes into the Smithsonian, where it is part of a display about the protests starting, I guess. Uh, I mean, really, they've been gone. Spiral Q's been around since 1996. There have been organizations around. ACT UP's been around since the 80s. Um, there's organizations that have been doing this work of public protest and public speech for generations, literally. And the last couple of summers, beginning with George Floyd protests, I would say, um, we've really seen an uptick in, people speaking for themselves, speaking for the general public and the general social welfare, rather than speaking as politics and speaking in the veins of parties and stuff like that. Um, and so where I'm going with this is, we have all these dire economic news. If you read the news at all or watch the news, you've seen folks on the news saying things like, "Oh, you better go buy your Christmas presents now. There's not going to be anything on the shelves. There's hundreds of thousands of containers on hundreds of container ships that are out to sea and stuck out at sea. They can't be offloaded. Nobody wants to work," and these all tie into each other. So nobody wants to work because that nobody wants to work for low wages or work at the same amount that they were working before. And that means that, inflation is going to increase because now everybody has money. So if everybody has money, then everything's going to cost more and blah, blah, blah. So, that was my microcosm of the economic news there. I find this to be a little bit of Chicken Little. I kind of laugh a little bit at this. I've been seeing these same like topics swirl around and around and back again for the past month and a half. Really, before that, it started with the whole, nobody wants to work because there's actual funded jobless benefits available for people, and people without jobs can actually afford to survive. I don't know. Uh, and you guys feel free to jump in at any time. I personally think It's okay that if you don't have a job, you are afforded the ability to eat and live someplace by the government. Like, I don't know. I think that's okay.
So this is the thing, right? If you're alive, you're working. If you're alive, you're working. If you're sleeping, you're working. If you're jumping up and down and running a track race, you're working. And so, if you are alive and you need to meet your basic needs, you are working to get those basic needs. Now, if we need to survive and live within a governmental system and we can't have our own independent, autonomous governments and, towns and things like that that don't connect to the larger federal government, and the OG gangsters are like, yo, you need to be part of the United States of America because you're on this soil. Then, if I need to be alive and I need to do a job that earns money and tie into an economic system that uses money as the like as the trade system, then yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I have a kid and I don't have my job, I'm still working to maintain my basic needs. And if I'm sick, I'm working extra hard to maintain my basic needs. So that's my stance.
And basically, if you're going to set up the game and make all these rules, but you have to realize that you're playing with human pieces, and anybody with any sense of humanity should be willing to recognize that the game is already set up. So people deserve to live, whether or not they're working in the economy. Anyway, I wanted to welcome on to the screen Charles Graham, one of our regular guests. Charles, welcome. Introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do.
Charles Graham, he, they, software developer. I tried to join earlier because the one time that I thought that I had 10 o'clock free, but I had another meeting scheduled. So sorry I'm late.
No worries.
Hopefully I'll be able to join these more often. Yeah, software developer, patron of the arts, overall nerd. That's who I am.
Uh, all great things, and welcome to the show. And also, feel free to jump in at any point. Um, so yeah, people deserve to live, and part of the rights in the Constitution are the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, when you have people starting to tell you, oh, um, we don't need to provide a basic income for people, they won't work. Well, that's just too bad because you created this contract and now it's time to pay up.
Yeah,
um
it's time to pay up. It really is time to pay up. You've been using our wealth and our social wealth, where we're talking about that social wealth. It is not a mistake that the highest, aside from data right now, that the that the most valuable products are human labor and land. If you don't have human labor and you don't have land, you don't have anything. And the people who are hoarding all of the wealth that has been produced by our labor know that. And they're like, why won't you work? And it's just like, dog, you work. Why don't you get to work? Why don't you do this job? If you can do this job, then I'll do my job. You down? No? Well, get out of my face. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is it. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's valuable, and you were saying data is social capital.
You're
Like
right. You're right.
data
Totally
is
right.
social capital. Like, so it
All right. I don't have
we've
to make an
actually
exception.
we've made the social capital into part of this capitalist economy. So yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating how that works. Um, yeah. I don't know. Just to briefly address some of the little parts of this that you see in the news. There's this empty shelf paranoia that the folks that don't agree with it are calling it, and I don't agree with it, so I'll go ahead and call it that. It is an empty shelf paranoia. Folks there is stuff for you to buy for Christmas. There will be stuff for you to buy for Christmas. Don't
and
worry about it.
and Kwanzaa.
And Kwanzaa, and whatever the heck else you celebrate. I don't care what you celebrate. If you have a birthday in December, my sister's birthday is Christmas Day, and she hates that she never gets separate presents. Anyway, um, I guarantee you that I can find a present for my sister's birthday and for Christmas at the same time. I guarantee you, that's possible. I see. Jennifer and Liza need to jump off. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. And I'll let you go. Do you have any final thoughts before you jump out? I know, Liza, you had mentioned something. Uh,
Just recap. Peoplehood is November 6th, 1 p.m. at the Paul Robeson House. Groups could still sign up. community@spiralq.org is the email address.
Yes, come to Peoplehood. It's the most wonderful day.
This is the Paul
Awesome.
Robeson House in my picture, actually.
That's what I was
Yeah.
pointing at. I was like, is that it?
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And this weird guy in a hat. I think I'm trying to hide this hat. It's very 90s or 2000.
I mean, you know,
It's a vintage
archive,
photo.
that's why you know it's been around for a while, and it's worth it. Come on out.
Awesome. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
presenting that, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully, you'll have time to jump on the coffee break chat every once in a while, and we'll talk more next time you have another event. But for now, go participate in Peoplehood, folks, and join Spiral Q in a little bit of public speech. Thank you guys for joining us. You can hop off anytime. I'm just gonna continue talking about the empty shelf paranoia, because I find this topic fascinating. So the empty shelf paranoia is, all of these economists going around saying, "Oh my God, there are containers stuck in all the ports, and empty containers aren't being shipped back to China and India and Vietnam, where we get all our stuff. And container ships are spending 4 or 5 days at anchor and not being offloaded. And then when they are being offloaded, stuff is getting stored nearby instead of being trucked immediately to its destination. Um, you know, yeah, those are all hiccups. But if you actually talk to the industry experts, people who run these supply chains, people who are out there actually doing this work, they say that it's a big nothing burger. They're like, oh, yeah, there's a little bit of a hiccup right now, but I guarantee you we'll clear it up in plenty of time for Christmas.
Well,
Um,
I mean, so I don't. I mean, I don't even know what happened last Christmas, but
Hmm.
I don't because
Sales were great last Christmas. The Christmas season was on par with 2019, and sales were just fine.
because I mean we generally have shortages in general, and just you add the Christmas thing on top of it. But I don't know. I would think you're more of a social democrat, and you might take this as an argument to think that this is a this is one of the hiccups of the way we do things, right? So are economists just being overly paranoid, or is this possible or likely? Meaning
Well, I would think that if you talk to the people that actually run the ships and shipping companies, and they say that it's doesn't mean anything, then I would guess it doesn't actually mean anything.
but they just transfer widgets. They don't care about the supply chain of stuff, right? Meaning like they're busier than ever. So to them, like whether there's whether there's shortages and whatever is not as much of an issue. The fact they have to wait 5 days in port instead of and like aren't able to turn as much would be their problem, but that's their only problem, right? You have to think
Right,
about
but they're saying that because that is their problem, that they're going to take care of that problem really quick, and that it won't exist anymore within the next like 3 4 weeks.
how are they going to do that.
I don't know. I'm not a shipping expert, but that's what the
God,
shipping experts say. Like the folks that are, in the actual industry, like running these things, say, "Oh no, don't worry about it. Like we'll take care of this." I just pasted you a link to an article um, that is the interview that I'm talking about. This journalist interviewed Lars Jensen, CEO of Linear Consultancy at Vespucci Maritime. Like it's an actual maritime company. They do shipping, and that's all they do. And yeah, you're right. Like their issue isn't necessarily what happens after the supply chain is cleared out a little bit, but I would think that, if there aren't supply chain woes, so to speak, that there aren't supply woes, or am I missing something here?
well, is supply or is defining supply chain as like the chain of events that gets one thing from like one place to the other?
No, supply chain is when you have a project to do or you want an end product. Um, the chain of shipping that needs to happen to complete that project or to create the end product. So, for instance, my company does a lot of installs at locations of lighting equipment and TVs and stuff like that for digital signage. Um,
Mhm.
and over the past like year, we've had huge supply chain issues, not only because of the manufacturing centers in China shutting down for several months, but also because of the shipping issues and, it taking like 10 weeks to get something from China where it used to take like 2 to 3 days. Um, so that's the supply chain issue. And that supply chain issue, as far as I understand, is caused by, there was a sudden stoppage 2 years ago of work all across these centers of industry in China. And then that cascaded to the rest of the world as well as COVID affected more and more people. Um, that much like a traffic jam on the highway, you're going to get cars backing up. And then, by the time you get to that part of the traffic jam that caused it, there's nothing going on. It's like how you slow down on the highway all of a sudden, and then you get past it, and then all of a sudden you're doing 65 again, and you didn't pass an accident, nothing happened, nothing like that. But it's much like highway flow. If one person presses the brake, it slows everything down for an hour or 2 hours in that area, just because of how the flow of cars works. So supply chain issues become very similar. Um, and so I mean, so on top of, like these folks saying that there's going to be shortages around Christmas, you have folks saying that nobody wants to work. And they're saying that's why there's going to be shortages around Christmas. And because there's nobody offloading trucks, there's nobody driving trucks, there's nobody offloading ships. and that, there's all these jobs available, but that nobody wants to do them. Um, and um, there is a relatively now famous citizen journalist, Joey Holtz, of Florida, who did a little test himself and applied for 60 jobs, two a day, over the course of the month of September, out of which applications he received literally one interview. And during that interview, the company that interviewed him violated the hiring laws by offering him the position for less money than they advertised it for. They advertised it at $10 an hour, and they told him that they would only hire him at 8.25, Florida's minimum wage. And they only offered him part-time hours but required full-time availability. Uh, so, when you talk about people not wanting to work, you gotta, I don't even know if it would be called meeting people halfway at that point. Like,
Well, no, but let's be honest. Nobody wants to work, right?
I
It's
mean,
like,
nobody wants to work. That's fine. I mean,
um,
that's true as well. I mean, I actually do want to work. I work all the time, even if I'm not paid for it. But
but but I don't know. I mean, I'm not just saying that what you do is just fun and games or whatever, but you actually enjoy what you do, right? For the most
sure.
part. I'm sure there's a lot of crap you got to deal with that you don't like, but I don't know. It's just like I always say that like Americans value hard work, and I'm like, why? Like, I think that's actually stupid. Like, I think you should do as little as possible to have like a good like. I think Americans should value laziness because like if you like make this one task really efficient or you work really hard at it, but you didn't have to do it in the first place, like I would value like figuring out whether you have to do that in the first place over like, oh, we've got this stupid thing that we have to do. Let's make it really efficient or let's work really hard at doing it. I don't know. If you look at a place like France, like in America, the first thing you ask somebody is like, what do they do for a living? And like in like France, that's like an offensive question. They're just like, what I do for a living is like bullshit. Like and I talked to my buddy who worked in France, and they were just like, and the bosses there were just like, sort of like, look, I've got to be here, you've got to be here. Just don't like mess with my time. Like while we're here, let's just do this thing so we can go off and do the important stuff in our life. And as much as the French get a bad rap for being assholes, like I would agree with them. Also, I think that they're not assholes. They just have a different way of doing things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a cultural difference. Nobody's
Yeah.
really, I would say Americans are assholes on a
Oh yeah.
global perspective more than the French are. But
Oh
yeah.
yeah. I mean, they are. Just because, like, I mean, if you think about it, like, imagine. So, I've been to Paris twice, and I mean, there's certain things that are just like, okay, that are sort of very subtle differences that you wouldn't get unless you like knew French people or studied French culture. Like the subtle stuff is like whenever you go into a place, you always say like bonjour, bonsoir, whatever, something like that. But also at the same time, like that's just a level of like empathy, like of like interaction they want. They don't want anything more. Versus like Americans would either say nothing or like be like super happy, smiling, and like we're like good buds right away. And the French people like no, like say hello and goodbye. After that, you know, like we don't know each other like that. There's a certain standoffishness there, just in the general culture. They value quiet.
But
A
well,
lot.
it sounds more like, I mean, also with the work the like what do you do for work being semi-taboo. It sounds more like they just have stronger social limits to their interactions than we do here. You know, like I've coming from in black culture, especially urban black culture, it's very common to ask about your immediate family as soon as you start talking to somebody. Like, you don't need to know them real close, but like, if you don't ask about how somebody's mom's is doing, you're gonna get in trouble. Um,
Oh yeah.
Whereas, like, and that's a social, it's just a different social construct. Like, well, also American black folks are like we all often socially act like we're all one family anyway, because we are pretty much. But um, so yeah, and it's a different social construct to like being in suburbs or being East Coast versus West Coast. Like I go to the West Coast a lot, and I hate the um, pretentiousness of interaction there. Like it's like super happy and friendly, but it's like a super happy friendly like you would experience it well at Disney World or something. Like, like it feels like painted on like a veneer, like
Yeah, that's why I don't know. I like it as a break, right? Meaning sometimes it's good to just talk and then people listen. Like whenever I go to San Francisco, it's like it doesn't matter what, like whether you say something crazy or you're going through some really deep shit. You can just like kind of talk about it and people are just like, okay. And that is like super refreshing. But I would think that the flakiness that I've seen over there would just drive me crazy. And I'm kind of a flaky person myself. Like, but um yeah, just the general flakiness of that. But like it also depends on what city you're in, um, and what time frame. Like San Francisco is different than it was 10 years ago, obviously. Um, it's a lot more of a like programmer culture than like it
I
was.
would say that urban culture gets homogenized in the US very quickly. Like, if you're in a city, it doesn't matter whether you're in New York, Philly, Atlanta, San Francisco, LA. Like they're very similar cultures, and there's more difference between the urban culture and the suburban culture and the rural culture than there are between like cultures by area. So like East Coast versus West Coast, or California versus Washington State, or something like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's 11 o'clock. I want to recognize everybody's time that's tuning in, and say thank you for everyone tuning in. Um, I was looking through my Facebook posts and noticed that the least distributed post was a post that is a WHYY article reminding folks that Monday is the last day to register to vote in the 2021 Pennsylvania general election. Yes, there's another election this year. Yes, it's important. Yes, you should register to vote if you aren't already registered, and Monday is the last day to do it. And I'll have Meg paste the PA Votes URL in the chats. But yeah, there's Pennsylvania Votes where you can find registration information and get registered if you aren't already. But yeah, want to thank everybody who tuned in for their time. Thank my guests, Liza, Jen, Charles. Really appreciate you all coming on. I'm just gonna transition to myself here for a moment just to say thank you for watching. Tune in next Wednesday. We'll have another coffee break chat, and we'll have more special guests, more current events. And if you like what you see, please hit the like button, or one of the reacts, the heart, the whatever. Depends what platform you're on. We are on multiple platforms all at the same time, live. So we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook. So you can subscribe to our channel on any of those platforms. We're also on Mob Crush and Twitch, where you can also subscribe to us on that platform. Yeah, so please subscribe, and if you like what you see, consider donating to our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthiefproductions, and check out our new website, which is almost done being rewritten, lightthiefproductions.com. So check us out there, and tune in next week, and enjoy the rest of your week.